All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we are going to talk about Terence Crawford ruining boxing and Floyd Mayweather Jr. ruining boxing, according to a noted boxing writer. And the logic that he used, I think we should really talk about because it's important to the sport of boxing. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we are going to be primarily in the 147-pound division, and we are going to be talking about Terence Bud Crawford, who anybody familiar with this channel knows, I believe, ducked Errol Spence Jr. in what mildly should be considered humiliating fashion for himself and for the sport of boxing, because there's just no reason that he gave and no reason for that fight not taking place. And we're also going to talk, however, about Floyd Mayweather Jr. and what some noted boxing writers had to say about the two and how ridiculously unfair it is, in my opinion, and flat out wrong and not accepting responsibility and putting the blame where it really belongs. Now, before I get into that, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are new to the channel, please accept my invitation to hit that subscribe button. If you are a longtime supporter and like my man, the king of the supporters, my man, John Bowie, what's good with you, sir? Thank you so much for your support in the super chat and the Cash App. Thank you, sir, so much for your comments in the comment section of the live streams and of the videos, and in hitting that like button. A super thanks where you can support content creators. Thank you so much, John Bowie. You are one of the best supporters of boxing content creators that there is. Thank you so much for your support. Let's get into this. Okay, now, first things first, I've been on Terence Crawford rough over the fact that he walked away from the Errol Spence Jr. fight, did not make that fight for, in my opinion, no good reason at all. Seems to me that he just doesn't want the fight, doesn't think he owes the fight to boxing fans, and he would rather take fights of significantly less risk and with a good amount of money and not fight the very hard fight for whatever reason he has. Some people say he doesn't think he can win. Some people think other reasons. But whatever the case is, definitely a bad move, in my opinion, as a lifelong boxing fan. And let me assure you, I've been a lifelong boxing fan, so I believe I've got a little bit of the skin in the game to give my opinion about what a certain boxer writer said. I won't say his name, but he was getting interviewed by Lance Pugmire, and he actually, in this particular situation, really pretty much put the blame on Terence Crawford and saying, look, man, Terence Crawford doesn't feel like he has a responsibility to boxing fans. He has that attitude, might have sold in the 1980s, but right now it doesn't sell. It's not really going to work. And, you know, it's so disappointing that he goes from thinking we're going to see this Errol Spence and Terence Crawford bout to go into something that is such a monumental drop in competition, all the way down to David Avanesyan, who is famous, I do believe, for being, that's what they refer to him as being the last person to fight Sugar Shane Mosley, but also lost to Lamont Peterson, got knocked out by Aegis Kalvanakis, somebody that nobody's interested in seeing him fight. It was like falling from the mountaintop all the way down into the depth of the valley, right? So with that, I agreed. And so after that, though, that's when people start going too far. And let me tell you what I mean. They start talking about how boxing is now, how so many people are leaving the sport of boxing because of that situation. More people are going to be leaving the sport of boxing. Similarly, so many people left the sport of boxing after the Floyd Mayweather Jr. Manny Pacquiao fight because of the disappointment and all the time that it took to make that fight, right? That's why they're leaving boxing. And I thought to myself, wow, man, how monumentally unfair, and how are you going to ignore a much greater examples and reasons for boxing losing interest than what those fighters are doing. Now, interestingly enough, when people talk about a lot of people talk about the Errol Spence Jr. Terence Crawford fight, they point and they say, look, you can't blame the fighters. You got to blame the business of boxing, right? It's the promoters, it's the networks, right? Now, in the instance of Terence Crawford, I blame Terence Crawford. I'm going to be very blunt about it. I blame Terence Crawford because Terence Crawford is his own promoter. He made his own decisions and he talked about his decision. If he had not spoken about his decision, then you know what he said, I wouldn't know. But hey, man, better to keep your mouth shut and have people think you're a fool than open your mouth and then prove it, right? So I'm not going to call him a fool, but better to keep your mouth shut and have people think you're a duck than open your mouth and have people prove it and prove it to people. That's that scenario, right? But when you're talking about long-term things, as far as massive amounts of fans leaving a sport, that is not on an individual boxer. Terence Crawford not having an Errol Spence Jr. fight, that fight does not make or break all of boxing. There has been multiple scenarios where I think is much more likely to be causing the downfall of boxing than that particular fight, and definitely not Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao, because if you've not noticed, Floyd Mayweather Jr. sold bigger pay-per-views They made bigger pay-per-views, had bigger gates, and more talk around boxing when he was fighting and he was at the top of the game than Oscar De La Hoya and Felix Trinidad and those guys and Roy Jones Jr. had in the 1990s. So the idea that it was Floyd that pushed people away from boxing is silly, unless you just happen to be one of the people that wanted him to lose. Now, if you felt like, man, I was really hoping that Floyd Mayweather would lose to Manny Pacquiao, and you were so butthurt that you never watched boxing again after that happened, then maybe that's the case for you. But I would posit that these problems may be the problem. For example, Canelo Alvarez is the biggest name in boxing after Floyd Mayweather Jr., and he is literally ducking everybody. Okay, he will not fight. He has not fought a black or Latino fighter, or a black or Latino fighter, only two since 2016. That was right around the time that Floyd Mayweather Jr. left the sport. The Manny Pacquiao fight was in 2015. The Conor McGregor fight was in 2017. Right since 2016, when Canelo Alvarez is supposed to carry the torch for Floyd Mayweather Jr., he puts the torch in his backpack and only fights Eastern Europeans, which is something else. That in the United States, where we're really talking, which is what we're really talking about, right? Nobody's saying people's not supporting boxing in the UK. People are supporting boxing in the UK, or people are supporting boxing in Japan. People are supporting boxing in Japan. Or you're not having the usual fights that you have, in Mexico with domestic level Mexican fighters. You're getting that. What's not going on is a massive amount of ticket sales and interest in boxing in the United States. And that was the next guy that came around who? It was Canelo Alvarez, who is now not fighting anybody of interest to people that want to go to fights in the United States or want to actually watch or buy the pay-per-views in the United States. And even more so, he completely left the pay-per-view scene and went over to DAZN. Where DAZN buried him in a bunch of nobody's watching you type of stuff. So no Canelo Alvarez versus Jamal Charlo at 160. No Canelo Alvarez versus Demetrius Andrade. No Canelo Alvarez versus David Benavidez. No Canelo Alvarez versus any other American or with the exception of Caleb Plant. Over the course of years. So I find it really interesting that people keep talking that this perspective would be there for Terence Crawford, and you would completely ignore, at least for the sake of, this conversation, we would ignore what Canelo's impact on that was. Or let's say, for example, the promotion by Top Rank of Vasily Lomachenko is the best fighter in the world for year after year after year, where there's literally no fan interest in that guy at all. So they talk about how Jake Paul can promote fights, but Terence Crawford can't. Well, what do you got to say about Canelo Alvarez, who refused to even speak English for years? And that's not saying that he had to, but goodness gracious, if he at least would have fought somebody where that person could have, and there was some interest, then boom, the fights may do very, very well. Same, but what about Vasily Lomachenko and this obsession that people had with Vasily Lomachenko, and the obsession that the boxing media had with Gennady Golovkin, and the obsession that they had with Sergey Kovalev, and the obsession that they had before that with Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko. This great and eternal search for non-American fighters over since Don King left. I think that has more to do with anything than driving fans away from boxing, because that is what people often want to see, especially in other areas. And you can go to music. It was only a matter of time before hard rock died out, because it left its original source, which was the people that created it, and it morphed into something completely different, which gave a bunch of people headaches, and a finite amount of people liked it. But over time, it just kind of whittled away, and it moved back into something else much more similar to what people were originally interested in. And that's what's going on with boxing. People want to see very, very good fighters and get a little bit tired of you selling people that wind up that, first of all, you just hope they get interested in because of your preconceived notions about skin color. At least that's my take. So how about if we're going to talk and blame people for what's going on in boxing, how about we look at the whole picture and maybe point to some of those things? But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Deuces.